Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Heart to Heart. This is an IGTV and now newly branded YouTube series started by myself, Dr. Breen Mohammed, and my partner in crime, Dr. Misha Gupta, where we talk to today's physicians about their journeys through medicine, social media presence, and really just learning about them as people. So today we are so fortunate to have our friend, Dr. Vicki Chan, an ophthalmologist, social media educator, marketer, and entrepreneur. She graduated from USC for undergrad and Johns Hopkins for medical school. She then went on to do her ophthalmology residency at UCLA, followed by a glaucoma fellowship. She has experience in both academic as well as private practice, and is also an entrepreneur with her own business ventures. She has a huge passion for social media. I'm sure some of you guys recognize her from TikTok with regards to education on topics that range from ophthalmology, current medical issues, medical school, and life as a physician. Vicki, we are so incredibly grateful to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, that was an amazing introduction. I'm like super impressed.
It's all you.
It's all you. You made it sound really cool.
Girl, it's all you. You're the one who's cool. So,
I'm thank you so much for that. That was really cool.
Of course.
Yeah.
So to get started, we usually ask all of our interviewees this, but how were you able to, get started within medicine? What's your medical journey about, and what made you really interested in ophthalmology?
Well, it's not that exciting, actually, honestly, like compared to everything you just said. My journey was pretty straightforward. My dad's a physician. And so I think, and I'm the oldest, and I think many of you might kind of understand this journey. I mean, I kind of was going to be a doctor ever since I could talk or do anything. My dad was a physician as well. My two younger brothers as well, but I think I definitely, I never swayed from medicine. In fact, I went to a straight 8-year med program, like one of those straight programs at USC, which I actually really love. And I highly recommend if anyone is thinking about that route. And so went straight through, ended up going to Johns Hopkins. I actually really loved cardiology when I started. I actually did interventional cardiology research at UCLA after my first year. And I was set. And then I did my surgery rotation as a third year and fell in love with surgery. And so it was one of those decisions I made. I'm like, I love medicine. I love working with patients. I did enjoy clinic, but I also love surgery, And so I literally sat down and I was like, okay, what are the specialties that allow me to do both clinical and surgical? And ophthalmology was on the list. I did a sub-I, fell in love, and that's how I made the decision, is I really just wanted something that really combined surgical and clinical medicine.
Awesome. So, so I mentioned this a little bit before in the intro, but you've obviously have experience with both academic and private practice. So how did you choose academic and then private practice for yourself?
Yeah. So I think, having gone to Johns Hopkins, I went to UCLA, very academically strong programs, and so I don't want to say brainwashed, but I want to say highly encouraged. That's all I knew, right? Academic medicine, right? And amazing physicians and researchers and educators. And I just imagined that was what I was going to do. I remember thinking I'm going to be a dean, when I was at Hopkins. And then when I was at UCLA, I love teaching. I thought I would stay. And I did, actually. I stayed on for about a year, and, you kind of realize what? I don't really love the research. I don't really love the expectations. And, I kind of saw the other doctors around me. I was like, maybe this is not really what I wanted. When you're actually in it. Right? When you're actually living it. Right. And so I started searching around. I, worked in private practice. I worked for a managed hospital setting. I kind of checked out everything. And I think ultimately what helped me make that decision was, I wanted a family. I wanted the flexibility. I wanted a little bit more freedom. Mm-hmm. And I just realized academics wasn't going to give me what I wanted. I know it's doable. I know there are plenty of, fathers, mothers, people with families in academics, but I just knew it would be more difficult, and I didn't love the research. And so that was why I made that decision.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. Well, first, I just want to make a comment about how you went from cardiology to ophthalmology, because our previous guest, Jennifer Kovu, she went the other way. She went, from ophthalmology to cardiology. Okay. So I just think that's just a fun fact. But what I was going to mention about, academic and private practice, I think that, as medical trainees, we don't get exposed to a lot of different aspects of medicine, right? And that's why, one of the reasons why we're doing this is to, educate on different journeys, on different perspectives from different physicians in medicine. And I think, sometimes it's like not until we're in it that we realize, what, this might not be the best fit for me. And then it's okay to change our mind and go into something else. But I do wish, and maybe this is something, that will happen in the future, that perhaps, as students are asking for more exposure to different things, that they can get exposed to, the business side of medicine in terms of learning about finances and billing, because that's something we all have to deal with, of exploring private practice while they're still in their rotation, so they can decide, is this the type of lifestyle I want? Do I want academics, or do I want a hybrid model? And so, yeah, I think that, just hearing your story helps to, maybe change the paradigm of what we're already doing, Yeah,
no, I totally agree. I had no idea. I had no, and I distinctly remember, and I cringe. I remember when I was interviewing for a job, and the guy was like, so what kind of job are you looking for? Which is a legit question, right? Yeah. Like, and I literally was like, I don't know, a job.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I think back, I'm like, oh my God, he must have thought I was such, and he's asking, for those of you who are listening, if you're not, they're asking like, do you want a full-time position? Do you want a part-time position? Do you want to be an independent contractor, per diem, or, there's a different ways to practice. And I had no idea, and I just cringe.
Yeah. No, you're not alone. I think so many of us, because we're just looking for that job, and we've been in such training mode that once we do become attendings, and all of us are early career, we're then learning what it is to be an attending and all of those things that come with it. But you've now channeled your educational interests, outside of research, but into social media. You have a huge, amazing presence on TikTok. I'm such a fan. And, also on Instagram. And so, I was having a discussion about this recently with some academic colleagues about, a digital scholarship and how this can help with that, but also in the pursuit of your own interests, such as education. So how did you get started? What were your goals? And then what advice do you have for people to grow their platforms?
Oh my gosh. Again, not what I expected, for this to be today. Like if you had told me 5-6 years ago, I was like, oh yeah, you're going to be on social media. You'll be on Instagram. I'm like, Insta what? Like, I don't, but I honestly, so I started my social media journey, I guess, about, 5 or 6 years ago. I was practicing. I had just had my daughter. She was about 2 years old. I was working full time. I guess I was splitting my time between private practice and my managed care, but I was working full time, basically, taking call, doing all that. And my daughter was 2. And I think I just, again, realized like, man, that flexibility that I was looking for, I kind of want that, like for real now, and I laugh because, it's one thing to like realize what you want and then another thing to actually do it. And so, when I transitioned out of academics, in my head, I was like, oh, maybe I could go part-time. Maybe, I want a job that would give me that flexibility, but I never actually did it. I still worked full-time. I took the call. I did all the things that I was expected to do, and then my daughter was 2 and I was like, okay, well, this is hard. And maybe now I do want some flexibility. And so I started a direct sales business. And that actually was what really introduced me to social media, because that was kind of where it was happening about 5 or 6 years ago. Social media was kind of where people were building their businesses, right? And this was before like, you know, Facebook ads and Instagram ads. This was like real networking and actually connecting on social media. And so that was kind of my first intro, and it worked. I mean, we all know now, obviously, social media is powerful, you know, and back then, again, without like these ads, I was able to build this direct sales business, like a 6-figure a year business, just networking and connecting on Facebook. Okay, not even Instagram, it was like purely Facebook. And so I knew then, you know, how powerful social media would be. And so thanks to that business, I was able to kind of transition into truly part-time medicine. I was kind of able to find that balance a little bit more. And then you fast forward, you know, I started dabbling into Instagram because that's where people were, and then TikTok, you know, and then the pandemic hits, you know, and I don't know. I mean, you guys, you know, I don't want to make assumptions, but as an ophthalmologist, you know, I'm not infectious disease. Okay. You know, I'm not in the hospital. In fact, my clinics got shut down for a while because we are elective procedures, right? We're totally elective. You know, vision is important, but it's not life-threatening, right? And I remember being like, man, like I felt really helpless, you know, and just didn't know what to do or how to help. And at that time, I had grown a decent following on Facebook, on Instagram and TikTok, right? And I had talked about what you mentioned. You know, I mainly talked about ophthalmology and being a mom and doing that juggle, struggle, balance sort of thing. And then when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh, you know, I started talking about like masks, right? And kind of started talking more about COVID. And, you know, as things progressed, you know, the vaccines, and that was really where like the education really kind of came, and that's where kind of things blew up, right? Because, you know, it's a big topic, people, you know, and I was comfortable enough with social media that I was willing to talk about these things. You know, I got a lot of flack. I mean, but I was willing, and I was used to it by that point, that I was willing to have those conversations. And that's kind of where it all went. So like, you know, TikTok, Instagram kind of blew up just from that, from like talking about important topics at the time. And that has then, you know, then you have other opportunities that come from social media. It's amazing, right? Like I've had companies reach out, you know, partnerships, investment opportunities, advocacy opportunities, like using your platform for so much more. And it's been super fun and interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, it's amazing, you know, and to see your growth, and obviously we both follow you. We both love your content. We both love your education. But, you know, how would you then advise those like as mentors and mentees, you know, to grow their platforms and, you know, take reins of really the power that is within social media?
I mean, I think what's really important is you have to be true to yourself, you know, so never, again, you know, I spoke about things that were important to me. I spoke about things that I experienced, right? So obviously I'm an ophthalmologist. So I spoke about ophthalmology. I spoke about medical school and training and like the mom struggles, right? And that was what I truly lived. And I think people saw that and it resonated. And then when I switched into COVID, again, I'm not an infectious disease doctor, but you know, people had questions about masking and like, you know, and just basic stuff that we learn in medical school, right? Like, how does that work? Why do we need to mask? Like source control, like all that stuff, right? And then you start talking about vaccines. Like, again, like we get vaccines, like we took microbiology, immunology, like all this stuff. And so, you know, it's kind of just applying things that you are passionate about. Like for me, like I'm a mom, right? Like I care, I love to travel. Like my kids are out of school, like sure, again, I'm not an infectious disease doctor, but I mean, we're living this pandemic, right? We are all in there with everybody else. Like, I want to go back to regular life. Like, I want, you know, I'm just like any normal person. And so I think when people see that, like, I believe the stuff that I post about, right? I'm passionate about it. Like, I think it's important, you know? And so I think you have to be true to yourself. Like, a lot of people are like, well, I don't know. I mean, you'll figure it out. right? When you post about stuff that you're passionate about, it shows. And it's kind of funny, we talk about education, whatever, but I also do love shopping and fashion. And I remember there was a time actually when I first started posting, I'm like, no one wants to see my closet, it's
I do.
embarrassing. I have a lot of shoes. It's kind of embarrassing, but it's really funny because I remember I posted about something once and that literally got people loved it. Right. And I remember thinking making that decision, this is me. I just have to be true to myself. And I think people saw that, they saw that I was having fun with it or whatever, and it resonated with people. And so I remember making that decision. Okay, well, I'm not going to hide it anymore. I'm just going to embrace it. And that was part of it too. That's part of your evolution, right? Of really just embracing who you are and being open to that, And so I think that, I think just to be true to yourself, and your followers or whatever, or your friends will find you, and you'll go naturally from there.
Absolutely. So true. And I think that, the main message is just to be, just like you said, true to yourself and passionate about what you're doing. And if you really feel that on the inside, even if you have we've all started with small followings, and obviously Amisha and I are nowhere near where you are, but at the same time, I think we really feel it now. When we started, we were totally lost. We didn't know, kind of what direction. And now, on the other side, giving other people advice. I think one of the first things that they ask is, well, I don't know what to post about. And I don't know how to get a bigger following. And how does this person have this following? And I don't have the Instagram algorithm. Lord, the Instagram algorithm, we can't even figure it out because it keeps on changing. But I think at the end of the day, if you just remind yourself, this is why I started this. I know that I have this story to tell, or I want to share education on this, or, this pandemic, in some way I'm going to contribute. Like you just said, you're not an infectious disease doctor, but you're also a very relatable person who's going through the same issues as the general public is on, we have to mask, we want to travel, but we can't. How do we safely do things? The vaccines, all of these things. And because you're a physician, you have, that basic knowledge, you can help provide that to the public, but in a relatable way. And then also doing fun things on the side. Every girl wants to see fashion. Every girl wants to see a beautiful shoe closet. We want to see more of that because we want that. That's beautiful. So just being yourself, I think that is a great message. And, as a follow-up question, so, you've already talked about a little bit about your journey as, going from full-time academic or private, practice to kind of becoming this entrepreneur and really creating this, work-life balance for yourself. So, we know how you started, but a lot of physicians and, even Amisha and I have a lot of conversations about this is, we don't really know how to get started. Maybe if we're interested in tech or startup, or if we're interested in consulting or just doing other things outside of medicine, because this work-life balance and burnout is such a huge thing. So if you were to give advice to, maybe Amisha and I, or other, early career physicians, even people that are in training right now, as to if they have similar, pursuits or passions, how would they be able to get started?
I think a lot of it is just being aware of what's out there, right? There's just so much stuff out there. And I think for me, I didn't even realize, right? When you're in medicine, you're just you have these blinders on. I'm really lucky. My husband is also a physician, but he's also kind of, I lovingly call him a serial entrepreneur, right? He kind of wants to do everything. I remember when we were in medical school, we would be studying and he'd be like, we should open up a restaurant, right? And something, or we should invent something, or we should, and I'm like, oh my gosh, can we just pass this test? But to this day, he's like that. And so we do real estate, we have investments in different things. And I think just knowing that's out there, and so whatever your interests are, again, with tech or starting a company, whatever, is, to have those conversations, find someone who's doing what you want to do. Right. And I think right now with social media, and there's just so much out there. Right. And just asking the questions, right. Or just, listening to, there's a podcast for everything, right. There's a YouTube for everything, right. Just educating yourself as much as you can, but then in the end, you just kind of have to do it, right? Like if you want to be a YouTube star, you just kind of need to make a YouTube, you just need to make those videos. Or if you, want to write a blog or write a book, like you kind of just have to start writing, And so I think, just to you have to kind of dive in,
Yeah, I think that's a great point because so many people in medicine say this all the time is that we don't know anything but medicine. And I think it's because of fear also, but also lack of exposure. And so, yeah, I completely agree. I think that we have to, as physicians, as students, as, anyone, really just get outside of our comfort zone, and medicine is our comfort zone. And we have these other interests. And like you said, now with social media, there's Clubhouse and YouTube and all of these things, it's on us to really, like you said, ask the questions, but also to dive in and really, I think we're such perfectionists in the medical field, and failure and fear are things that we really get uncomfortable with. And so I think that's also why we have such trouble kind of getting into those other zones, is because of that fear of failure. But also, I think it just shows with all of these discussions and I think exposures to other physicians that are doing it, I think it's building confidence, at least within the medical realm, that, hey, look, like we can pursue interests and we're still doctors. It doesn't make us any less of a doctor to do so.
Right. And just to like go off of that, because I know, again, Amisha and I talk about this stuff all the time, and there are other physicians out there. And I want to get your opinion on this, Vicki, that actually look down upon physicians that pursue other interests outside of their field. And, again, when I keep on going back to Amisha and I, but we talk about this and it really doesn't sit well with us, because it's like, why can't we be able to just do what we want to do? Just because Vicki trained in ophthalmology, and Breen trained in adult cardiology, Amisha trained in pediatric cardiology, that's one lane, and I'm only supposed to be satisfied with just that. But why does it just have to be that? So for the people who have that kind of opinion, what is your, kind of talk back moment to that? Like, what do you even say, or do you even have to say anything? Like, sometimes I feel like you have to defend yourself if you want to be able to just live a little bit of a different life that might not seem, so traditional to other people.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, and I think especially in direct sales, I got that a lot. I think what you have to do sometimes is, it's going to sound really catty, but like you have to take a step back and, whoever you're talking to, right? If the person who is, whatever, chastising you or, talking down to you, you look at them and you're like, do I want to be you in 5-10 years? And usually the answer is no. Right? Like, to that person who is, and, we all have those colleagues, right? Like, I think you guys are probably younger than I am, but I mean, when I would look at some of my older colleagues, the ones I was trying so hard to impress and worked so hard. And I looked at their lives, that they're taking call in their 50s. And, my husband's an anesthesiologist, like picking up extra shifts, and their kids are at home, and, we're like, we don't really want that, to be honest, right? Like, we want to be home with our kids. We want to have our weekends to ourselves. We want to be part-time or whatever, right? We want to retire early. Like, we don't want to be working into our 60s and 70s because we have to, right? We all know people like that. And so I think when you think of it that way, right, then of course you have to do something different, right? Of course you're not going to do it the way they did it, you know? And you just have to kind of be okay with it, and just kind of know in the back of your mind that what you're doing is better for you in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes to show, like, there's been so many issues that have come to light through social media advocacy, and especially, with physician involvement and about staying in our lane. But really it's about, creating your own path. And that's what we've really tried to advocate through this podcast and IGTV series is that, everybody's journey is a little bit different, and it doesn't have to be what somebody else is trying to make it for you. You make it yourself. But I want to transition a little bit and regarding issues and being physicians and having this voice on social media with the pandemic and with what's come to light in a lot of different aspects of social injustice is, also racial disparities and inequities. And what do you think we can do with our voices on social media and as physicians to help combat that? I know it's a very big topic. There's not this could be, days on end conversation, but, just, I guess, in a few words, what are some things that you think that we can help do to combat that, to, diversify the field and to really kind of fight back against racism,
I mean, I think there's a lot of different issues there, right? So, I mean, I think, you mentioned inequities in medicine, healthcare. I think a lot of it, it's educating, letting people know, I think, unfortunately, I live in Los Angeles, I'm Asian. I am lucky that I haven't really experienced too much of that. And again, I worked for a university and private practice. And so my patients, haven't really had to deal with that. But as I learned more about vaccines, I realized oh my gosh, there's a huge population that aren't getting vaccinated. It's not because they don't want to, right? And so I think a lot of it's education, is just putting it out there and actually having those conversations and actually being like, hey, did you know that this is happening? Because I didn't, and so, so what education always, right? First and foremost, just you have to know to understand, right? That it's even there.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry,
go
ahead. Go ahead. No, I was just going to agree with you. I was going to agree with you. Yeah, definitely.
And then as far as diversity in the field of medicine itself, I think, the more you see, the more I think, seeing us here, right? If there's someone out there seeing us, right? Oh, I can be a woman in medicine. Oh, I can be a minority woman in medicine. Oh, I can be a mom in medicine, right? Just realizing that it's possible, or just, from our conversations, oh, wait, I can have a life and be a doctor, and I don't have to give up this other thing, right? Because I get these messages all the time from women. They're like, oh my God, thank you so much that I see that I don't have, that I can have a life, I can have a family, I can do this, I can do that. I didn't think I could, and so thanks for showing me. And, now I'm happily going to graduate, or I'm going to apply, and so I think just seeing it and seeing that it's possible, will hopefully diversify the type of people that we're getting in medicine.
Yeah. And I think also it goes back to the previous point that Brain brought up, right? If you're surrounded by people that say that you can't do it, but then you're exposing yourself and you see that there are people out there that can do it, right? It's going to change your own path. So completely. And again, it's a huge topic, but I agree. I think education and exposure and, just talking about things, hopefully will lead to change. But Vicki, thank you so much. I know that, I feel like we could both talk to you for the next 2 hours. So I know that, you have to get back to your children and your husband, but is there any, other points that you want to talk about today with our audience, or leave our audience with before you go to your family?
I mean, I think, there's just so much opportunity out there. And, I feel very lucky to be a physician. Don't get me wrong. I love what I do. And I feel very lucky that I get to help people and do surgeries and do all that stuff. I just didn't love it 24/7, all the time, at night, at midnight, being taken away from my kids. Right. I mean, that's the reality. I'm human, right? Doctors are human. We love what we do, and we devote a lot of our lives to medicine, but at the end of the day, we're human and we have loved ones and we have families and we have other passions and we have other things that we like to do. And so I think it's important to remember that, and I think, we're talking about this now, but it's easy, like you're in, and, even those of you who are watching who are pre-meds or, and you're like, I get it, but when you're in medicine, I mean, it is so easy just to like go, right? And, or even as mothers, right? Like you're in it and you just go, and before you know it, like years have passed. And I think, just remember, there's just so much out there. There's just so much to do, don't sacrifice all of that. Medicine's amazing. But there is so much more to it. And so just enjoy it, and have fun with it. And, just live life to its fullest. I know it's super cheesy, but
no, but it's
really
true.
That way.
We all need that reminder because there's only one life that we live, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Heart to Heart. And to all of our audience members, thank you for watching another episode, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.